Today on Education Forum, the graduate program, an interview with Dr. Greg Domin. Live from the studio in the College of Education and Health Professions, high atop Jordan Hall at Columbus State University in Columbus, Georgia, this is Education Forum with your hosts, Dr. Jeffrey Conklin and Dr. Greg Blaylock. Welcome to the Education Forum. I'm Jeff Conklin. A few weeks back, we were taping a show with Fred Cohen, and we had a few unexpected guests in the studio. And Greg and I went out after the show, and we started talking to the guests, and one of them was the interim associate provost for here at Columbus State University. And we talked to him and asked him if he'd be interested in being on the show, because we're always looking for new and interesting guests. And he agreed to do it. So today on Education Forum, as our special guest, we have the interim associate provost and director of graduate programs here at Columbus State University, Dr. Greg Domin. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Jeff. It's good to be with you.
Glad to have you on.
Greg, it's good to be with you.
Also with me today is my co-host, Dr. Gregory Blaylock, Assistant Professor of Special Education here at Columbus State University. Welcome, Greg.
Thanks, Jeff. Welcome.
Well, Greg, let's dive right into it. We want to find out a little bit about you and your background. So, where'd you come from?
Where did I come from? That's a great question. As you can tell, I'm not a native Southerner. It's not me who talks funny. It's all of you who talk funny. But in seriousness, I was born in Jersey City, New Jersey, where I spent the vast majority of my life before I went out to graduate school in Arizona.
Oh, okay.
And then from graduate school in Arizona, I took a position here in Georgia. I was at Mercer University for 10 years, and then from there, I came to Columbus State in July of 2009.
Okay. Well, what's your area?
I teach political science. I'm
Okay.
part of the political science and MPA program here at Columbus State University. And my areas of specialty are campaigns and elections, presidency, Congress, things that have to do with American government, which I
Okay.
like very much.
So, were you doing that as an undergrad? What was your undergrad work?
I was a political science undergrad.
great. Okay.
When I graduated way back in the Stone Age, I had enough of it, and so I had gone into the private sector, and then quickly realized that I didn't want to be unloading trucks for the rest of my life. And so I oddly enough, I looked into graduate school. I was given an opportunity to attend and received a graduate assistantship. I did fairly well, and from my master's degree, I said, well, I got this far. Let me see if I can go all the way.
Okay.
And one thing led to another, and I ended up at Northern Arizona in 1994 and received my doctorate in 1998 in political science.
It's a beautiful place to go to school and live, Northern Arizona.
It's vastly
University.
different than New Jersey.
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
Especially when you're waking up in end of September and there's a 3 foot of snow on the ground. You know, when I was younger, that was okay, but now as I've become a village elder, as it were, I don't miss those horrific snow days.
And neither do I.
Being from
why I
Michigan,
mean,
I would imagine that you would.
Yeah.
So, you did your undergraduate work up there in Jersey then?
In Jersey, a small liberal arts college called Drew University, which was very good to me, and I liked it very much. But, you know, you're 21, 22 years old. Your whole life is ahead of you. You don't want to do the school thing anymore, and so I had no aspirations to go on to graduate school.
No?
None.
Okay.
I was you know, bent on getting a job and making it on my own. But I worked in a HBA, Health and Beauty Aids chain, and I became a manager. But like I said, you know, the long hours, the prospects of being in this position when I was in my 40s, which I am now, and having to wake up very early in the morning to unload trucks and things like that, just was not appealing. So, as I said, I had a conversation with my family. Said I'd like to go back and try graduate school with after 4 years. I had to grow up, actually.
You know, you do.
And you know, I wanted to take that route. And lo and behold, East Stroudsburg University in Pennsylvania accepted me. They gave me, like I said, the graduate assistant, and it turned out to be a great experience.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Which is what I'm all about now, graduate studies.
Right.
So,
which we'll get to. What about research interests for you? Have you, done research on politics and things of that nature?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I've published a book on Jimmy Carter back in 2004 on his 76th presidential run.
Okay.
I have several articles in national security issues, some issues in campaigns and elections. But more recently, I've written articles and had them published on undergraduate education and why that's important in undergraduate research. And so, as a matter of fact, we've just come back from the Georgia Political Science Association's annual conference in Savannah, Georgia, and I'm very proud to say that we had 10 undergraduate and graduate students at that conference, and from Columbus State, and 5 faculty members. So we had a total of 15 folks represented at that conference, our largest contingent ever, and it was a great conference, and our kids did really well.
Cool.
It is. I think that's really a great strength of CSU is the fact that we do emphasize undergraduate research opportunities. It's not just there, but we really, I think, as faculty, emphasize it with our undergrads. And really, that's where you build a real strong foundation for students that are prepared for more competitive graduate programs, whether they're here or somewhere else.
I was very impressed when I interviewed back in 2009 of the commitment of the faculty to the students, both graduate and undergraduates, the opportunities that they are being given, the fact that we're working on lean budgets, and the fact that the faculty are committed to seeing their students through to completion, and it's sort of a whatever it takes attitude. And I sort of, cliche to me, it's a quality public education for the everyday man and the everyday woman. And my 18 months here, I think that's been bared out.
Sure.
Excellent. Now, I want to go back to your book.
Okay.
You wrote a book. I wish you would have brought one along. We could have spotlighted a little bit and talked about it. And did you meet Jimmy Carter?
I have met President Carter on several occasions. Most recently was back in 2007. We had, President Carter teaches Sunday school.
Yes, I do.
At his church in Plains.
Yes.
And he was gracious enough to have us come in and sit there with a group of students who were at that time a part of a senior capstone program. And it was just fascinating that, former President of the United States is in front of a small congregation talking about faith and things like that. And it was just a surreal experience because not everybody, everybody gets to meet a former president of the United States or president of the United States, and to be this close with him really was a sort of a dream come true because you never think you're going to get to that level.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's a major dream come true. That's really cool.
Interesting. So your interest in politics and your research interest there, is that something you developed at the master's level, or is that something you developed more in your Northern Arizona at the doc program there?
It was more at the master's and graduate level, doctoral level. I had very good professors, mentors who were very caring, very encouraging, willing to work with the skills I had and the skills I didn't have. And that's what sort of got this whole thing rolling, is that, what did I want to do with a doctorate? Well, I thought I had a calling, a vocation of sorts to teach. And it was very important to me, and this again is cliche, is to want to give back. For all those folks who saw me through to this end, that I would, give back as best I could when I got to this level. And so my mission over all these years has been to do whatever it is I can to advance the well-being and the goals of my students in whatever capacity they have. So it really is a labor of love. It's not labor like it was when I was in
it's love.
That's right.
It was real labor.
And it's it's just wonderful to see somebody who starts out with one set of skills, but by the end of their journey, they've got a whole set of new skills, and they're going on and working in congressional offices. They're going on to get their own doctorates. They're going on to get their master's degrees, and it's really, that's the satisfaction. That's the adrenaline rush, is when you hear back from a student and said, you were a part of my success, and I just wanted to say thank you. And that's what it's all for me.
Makes it worthwhile, doesn't it?
It does.
It really does.
So what do in terms of the undergraduates in political science, what do they do after they leave CSU, generally speaking? Do you have a breakdown generally of what?
Well, very generally, they can go on, of course, to get their graduate education, which we strongly encourage. In fact, we have a student in our program now who I think is quite capable of doing top-notch doctoral work, but it's a matter of, is this right for her? And whatever she chooses to do we'll support. They go on to law school, they can go into the public sector, into government, nonprofits. I went into retail, so maybe that's not such a good example. Yeah, but on average, they find themselves in those positions, and for the most part, they've been all very successful in what they do, and it's fulfilling, as I said, to know that we were a small part of that development.
Oh, sure.
And there are fairly active student groups in political science here. For instance, you have a pre-law group, I think. Is that
We have a number of groups. The College Republicans, there's a pre-law organization that Dr. Kimberly Gill oversees, so if you're interested in pre-law, you might want to go and have a conversation with her. We have Students for Society for Democratic Students for Democratic Society, SDS. They're active. There's a myriad of groups that are active in sponsoring things. So it's a very active department, excellent faculty, committed to the students, and they roll along.
I think that's a real important part of any program, is having these student organizations so that students can get together and share their interests, because it's real easy as a student to go through and get in the mode of, at the undergraduate level particularly, of just checking classes on, taking classes, and never really thinking about the gestalt of it all, really the overarching purpose of what I'm doing in this program, whatever this program is. And that's why I think active student organizations within the programs can be real beneficial.
Very important.
Well, kind of remind them, this is what we're about.
Right. We wanted it to be more than just come, take your classes, and go home.
That's right.
We want you to participate in student organizations. We want you to participate in study abroad. We want you to participate in trips we take to Washington, D.C. to be part of other seminars. We want you to do internships. We push them to do more than just classwork. So for me, it's always been an education outside the four walls of a classroom. And it's where really all the learning takes place.
Makes sense.
And our department has been fantastic in stressing that, and will continue to do so.
Good.
It's interesting. I've heard, you just reminded me of it, you actually do have a class every year, an experience every year where they go to Washington, right? That's a part of a class?
Yes. The last couple of semesters we've gone up to Washington, D.C. As part of a congressional seminar that they spent a week up in Washington, D.C. as part of the Washington Center, which is a nonprofit that's been up there for the better part of 35 years now. And then we just came back in May from a national security seminar. And I mean, we're not just talking about academicians who are important to all this, but I mean folks who are actual congressmen, actual practitioners in the field of national security, who can, enhance the classroom experience by putting on these workshops, and then there are site visits, things of that nature. And so the impetus for the conference I was talking to you about earlier was that these students went to this national security conference and wrote papers on it and then presented them at a professional conference, which we're very pleased that they can, feel as if they're, or at least for a moment, peers with folks in these fields.
Absolutely. What a great opportunity
I think it
at
is
the
too.
undergraduate
I think
level.
it is too. So you mentioned that you were very interested in politics. Have you been involved with any campaigns yourself?
A couple.
Okay.
I had one where I advised on a student who was a student of mine at Mercer, who became the youngest city council person in Warner Robins.
Okay.
He was a mere 21 years old. He wanted to make a difference in Warner Robins, and so he ran. He threw his hat in the ring and ran. He had no expectations that he was going to win. But he found himself in a runoff. So he got himself that far, and we were just enormously pleased by that and so proud of him. But then he actually got in the runoff and won. And he won, and this is where I dispute folks who say, well, my vote doesn't count. Well, you know what? It does, because in this person's case, he won by 18 votes.
Excellent.
Wow.
Excellent.
He ran. He won the runoff by 18 votes.
That's a great example. Wow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now he's no longer on the city council. He's gone off to Texas into divinity school. He wanted to try it. He tried it. It just wasn't for him. But now he's found his calling. But you find these opportunities. You take advantage of them.
Sure.
You find folks who will encourage you and support you, and it works out. It's great. If it doesn't, there's another door that'll open.
He gave it a flyer.
It's interesting, though, coming off that question you just asked, your own involvement in local elections. As a political science professor, do you have to think about or be concerned about your own interest, perhaps, if you had an interest in working on somebody's campaign and how that might conflict with your role as a professor who, maybe shouldn't be leaning one way or the other in terms of whatever issues we might be talking about.
I guess I can answer that in a couple of ways. One is that for the student, in this case, it was merely just, this is how you run a campaign. These are the issues. This is what I would suggest. It was done voluntarily because he was my student and he just wanted some advice.
Sure.
But maybe in the classroom and in a public forum like this, I think it's imperative that you don't come off as a partisan. That's not what it's all about. I'm an educator first, and the best way to educate is to talk about things as fair and balanced, not to plug another TV network.
Sounds like it.
But to try to explore all the issues, to be fair, not to be overly critical and overly partisan, so that our dean in the College of Letters and Sciences, Dean David Lanou, challenged us to be more publicly visible. But if you're going to be more publicly visible, you have to do so in a very professional manner, in such a way that the administration is not receiving letters that, oh, you're overly conservative or overly liberal or overly libertarian, so that you try and cover the issue in a broad stroke that doesn't necessarily set somebody off to think that you're championing one cause or the other.
And I would imagine that would be challenging
That would
at
be
times.
difficult,
You'd have to think through, perhaps.
It is, just as it is in the classroom, that you don't want to make students feel as if their points of view are not important.
Right.
You encourage them to be part of the discussion by exploring all points of view. And I found that to be fairly effective, that the so-called wallflowers, as I call them, who are, for whatever reason, not necessarily interested in the beginning of the semester in participating, they find that that's a safe environment to view their opinion because they're not being criticized because they may not hold the majority. They're not part of the groupthink. And if you can create those kinds of, that environment, I think you can have a successful dialogue where you're actually learning not only about what you stand for, but what others stand for and why. And I think that's what's absent from the political dialogue. Not that we want to get into that, but that's obviously what's absent from the political dialogue, say, in Washington, D.C.
Now, one of the things we do see in larger universities is you do have political science professors that have a point of view and a certain bent or leaning, and that's made very clear. I mean, those are the ones that they're going to, and it's Professor so-and-so in the political science department, and a Democratic pundit or whatever, and
I get it, but I don't necessarily agree with it. For me, it's better. As again, I take on my role as an educator seriously, as a professional, that this is my job, and sort of the politicking is after hours, out of the public spotlight, that where if I felt very strongly or advocated for an issue, I'm doing it as an individual citizen, not as a representative of Columbus State University's political science department.
Keeps it nice and clean that way. It really does.
If you can juggle, keep that balance.
That line.
That's right.
Right, and it just comes back to the most important thing, it seems to me, and that's that way all of your students in your class, no matter what philosophical background they may be coming from or looking toward, they feel comfortable with you as a teacher, as a mentor.
That's an excellent point.
You want to know what gives me great pleasure about being an educator is that during the course of a semester, they're always guessing as to what I am. And so for the final examination, they're given a few extra points. Explain to me what you think or what ideology you think I hold and why. There's no correct answer. It's just this is what your viewpoint is.
Back it up with evidence.
Because it drives them nuts.
Oh, sure it
does. And they're talking about it the whole semester. They're probably talking about it. Did you hear what? No, I think he's really meant this when he said this.
So I take great pleasure in that, because to me that's telling me I'm trying to be as nonpartisan and as fair about the argument as I can to explore all sides of an issue.
Sure.
And I get a great deal of satisfaction knowing that they
I could see that.
And it gives you, I would imagine, gives you good feedback in terms of what students are reading about you. That may or may not be intended, may or may not be, there may be subtle things that you don't realize. So I would imagine that'd be very useful.
Yes.
Good. I think this is a good place for us to take a break.
Really? We just got started.
I know we're rolling right along. I'd like to remind folks that you're watching the Education Forum, and I'm Jeff Conklin. back on Season 2 of the Education Forum. I'm Jeff Conklin, today with our special guest, Dr. Greg Domin, who's the Interim Associate Provost here at Columbus State University. And of course, I'm here with my guest host, Dr. Greg Blaylock. And we, before the break, were talking about the background of Dr. Domin, and we're going to go back into that right now. And I wanted to ask you, are you still teaching?
Yes, I teach a section of American well, actually this semester, 2 sections of American government. I'll also be teaching state and local government in the spring and a course on Congress in the summer. So if you're looking for a course, sign up. Be happy to have you.
Well, the thing that amazes me is how you can fit that in. You are such a busy person.
Well, you know, as I said, my first calling is teaching. Even though I came on as chair in political science at Columbus State, you know, there's an expectation of teaching, and it keeps it, you know, to use a cliche, real for me. That, you know, I'm not, you know, in my cave for 8 hours a day. That I get to meet the students, I get to interact with the students. We've had a very successful year last year with some of the initiatives we had, and involving the students in that. And so, you know, that, as I said, it's all about, you know, giving back. It's all about getting them to where they want to go.
Sure.
And if I can be a vehicle for that, then I'm all willing to do what's ever necessary, whatever courses need to be taught.
Cool.
When you're in a small department like ours, or even smaller when I was at Mercer, I mean, you quickly become adept at teaching all aspects of political science, as I'm sure you do in education, right?
Yes, we have to,
You just need to stay one chapter ahead of the students.
Some days,
I'm sorry, did I say that out loud?
some days that's what you're doing in your office right before.
That's right.
Yeah, I know. Now, why did you come to Columbus State?
That's a great question. I had a long and successful career at Mercer, and I was very content to be there. But to be quite honest with you, I guess at about year 8 or year 9, I was wondering, is there anything more than just this? Not that there was anything wrong with that, but I don't know if you gentlemen ever feel this, but there was a sense of, I'm stuck. I'm in a rut.
Kind of a new challenge, something.
A new challenge, and it was just sort of as a whim. I saw the advertisement for the chair's position in our department, and I put the packet together, and I said, well, you know, let's just see what happens. And a short while after that, I got a call from Dr. Bill Chappell, esteemed Bill Chappell, and he said, was I still interested in the position? And I said, well, yes. Let's have a conversation. And I interviewed. I thought I had a couple of days of successful interviews. I met a lot of our colleagues, and they were just so very courteous to me and very hospitable. And I said, well, you know, this would be a great place to transition from if the position came my way. And I had no expectations that it did, because I figured there were other candidates. And then after, I guess, about a week, they made me an offer. They made me one of those offers you couldn't refuse.
There you go.
To go back to Jersey. And my wife and I deliberated over it a little bit and prayed about it, and we thought that this would be a great opportunity, and I haven't looked back.
Good.
CSU has been very good to me. My colleagues have been very good to me, and I'm very glad to be here.
Great. So you were here for last year.
I was here in July of 2009, so it's a little over, about 18 months.
And then you got tapped this fall to be the interim associate provost.
Right. Dr. Tom Hackett, who I'm sure many of you know very well.
He's been on the show.
He's okay.
He helped put this all together so we could have the show. So
yeah, well, there you go. I'm talking about a founder here.
Yes.
Right.
Came into my office late September, very early October, and said, I've got something for you to do if you're interested. And he laid out for me what I would be doing, and I have to be honest with you, I was a little hesitant. And the reason why is because we had a good thing going in political science. I had just gotten here, and, you know, just as anything else you start, it's unfinished business.
Oh, absolutely.
But, you know, at the same time, it was an opportunity that, you know, I could maybe have a greater impact on a larger level. And, you know, I didn't want to let him down. I didn't want to let Dr. Mescon down. So after some prayer and talking with my wife, we accepted, and we're off and running.
Cool.
And so 6 weeks into it, I think we're doing something. I'm not sure what, but something seems to be happening.
Good.
So as assistant provost, what are your primary responsibilities? What do you do?
Well, my immediate responsibility is working with the graduate school. And one may say, well, what is that? You know, it doesn't sound like it's very difficult. Well, it is, because it's, in my opinion, you sort of act, the graduate school is a confederation. It's like the UN, or you know, back when we were founded under the Articles of Confederation, where You're trying to get constituents moving in the same direction. You're trying to get a sense of what it is that they do, how they do it, and how we can improve it. Because one, I think, of the real growth areas for CSU will be graduate education. And you folks here in the College of Education and Health Professions know all about that, since of the 31 or so programs we have, I think you have 12 or 13 of them.
Yes.
So you're, I think, the largest part of the graduate school. And so, you have these conversations and you talk about things like, how to improve admissions and how do we recruit better and how can we raise funds for the graduate college and, do we have a home for it? And so it's at this point it's fact-finding and putting things together and then perhaps moving on some of these things in January. I also work with grants. We're part of that. Greg is on that committee and helping us sort of get our mind around that. And then we're also working with IRB, the Internal Review Board, which is very important now that we have a
doc program.
We have a doctoral program, a model. It's important to have that component in place because that'll open up other doors for funding and grants and things like that. So I do those things, whatever else Tom and Tina Butcher, another colleague of ours here in the college, just whatever it's needed to support their efforts.
Okay. Now, you mentioned a graduate college. Is it actually a graduate college, or is it just a graduate program at this point? Or?
It's an actual graduate school. I mean, we
school.
have a graduate school, and for all of those of you who are watching this, it's in Tucker Hall.
Okay.
And we're going to have an open house on December 1st, and you're all invited. Please come.
Great.
Food and beverage to be had by all.
I can tell you, if there's free food,
We'll be
Dr. Conklin will be there.
That's right. Please come on December 1st between 9 and 11 a.m. It'll be the ribbon cutting ceremony. But we have personnel in place there to facilitate what happens at the graduate school on a macro level.
Okay.
I mean, we're not interested in micromanaging anybody's program, but we're interested in sort of a macro approach to how we in the graduate school can put things in place that best support the graduate programs.
Okay. So now, graduate school, does that make it a college or just I'm trying to get my
How does
head
that
around
fit in the organizational
exactly.
scheme? Yeah, that's an interesting thought.
I'd have to tease that out a little bit, but at the moment it's a school.
Okay.
There's not a formal dean, there's a director,
Okay,
and so
that's where I was going with that. So
and so that's why I said it's not a union, it's more of a confederation.
Okay.
So we coordinate and things like that. I mean, I don't have any deanly-like powers, or that wouldn't be a bad thing.
Right. Eventually.
But at the same time, trying to get the different programs to, like I said, sort of go in the same direction about how we can improve and build the graduate program so that folks are looking to CSU in the region as their first choice for graduate school, as opposed to some of the other colleges in the area.
Absolutely, and I think that's a huge benefit to having this graduate school. We've had 30, 31 graduate, individual graduate programs for going back decades, but it's important to note, I think, that that was without a graduate school kind of overseeing the whole thing, and now we have this graduate school.
And they were just kind of off in their own direction.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And you'll continue to operate that way because you know what's best for your programs, but at the same time, providing resources, some infrastructure, some policies, whatever support you need to do those kinds of things, so that it's by happenstance, in the way that I look at it, that in 2005 we maybe had 890 graduate students.
Okay.
Today we have over 1,200.
Wow.
And I'm wondering, with just a little bit of coordination, and again, making CSU the first choice for students in this region to come to graduate school at CSU, that those numbers will increase manifold, and that's the goal.
Sure.
By offering them not just run-of-the-mill programs or just what's the flavor of the day, but what's coming on the horizon for the next 10, 20, 30, 50 years, so that we're well positioned to address the needs of not only the students, but the community and society at large.
Well, and when you're talking about drawing the graduate students from here, we also need to look outside of here. And
Yes.
I'm sure that's in your plan.
It is. We're, as you can imagine, we're well saturated in this market.
Yes.
But at the
Yes,
same
we are.
time, folks know that Columbus State is here, but in some respects they just don't know what we offer. And that's really hard to fathom. And then that's just me and my associates just having conversations with local business leaders, leaders on campus, who are, who have been in the business sector, and just having a conversation about, they know you're here, but what do we have to offer? And so there are efforts, just sort of tailor-made, our recruitment efforts to these industries about what CSU has to offer. and what we can offer in the future if you can communicate to us what your needs are.
Right.
And that's what's important, is not to just have a program for the sake of having a program, but is it fit a need in the society, in the community that we have, so that we can offer it and be on the cutting edge, so to speak, as opposed to them going somewhere else.
Being reactionary, yeah. It seems to me that's just such an important piece of continuing to build local infrastructure.
Well, and the point you made about being reactionary, too, I think is important, that we have to be much more forward-thinking than that. We just can't always react to conditions. We have to be ahead.
Sure.
Fort Benning, do they plug into that at all? Graduate programs?
Fort Benning does,
Yeah.
West Point does.
Okay.
We have had multiple efforts on the base. I don't think I'm telling you anything new here.
No.
And they have been non-starters.
Okay.
But there is a real commitment, at least as the way that I see it, with our liaison, Colonel Mark Ridley, with the captain's program that's coming from Fort Knox over the next couple of years.
They need graduate studies to become a captain.
Well, yes, and they need graduate studies that are portable and flexible.
Okay.
And so you'll be pleased to know that one of the programs in this college, the Education Leadership program, which, as a matter of fact, I'm a student in.
Oh, okay.
Is one of those programs that are going to be on the leading be one of the leading programs to attract students from Fort Benning to look at CSU a second time and a third time out.
Okay.
Along with the MBA program that's online. And part of the MPA program, which I'm housed out of, you can get the government administration program out of there online. And we're hoping that, we get a few students, we attract a few students, we don't fumble the ball on them, we see them through to completion, but that we're hoping that because we provide them a quality product, that by word of mouth they will convey to their colleagues that, consider CSU for your graduate education needs, because they really do deliver on it.
Good.
And that's what we're looking to do. Same thing up in West Point, as you know.
Well, and that's what I wanted to ask about.
We've got Kia up there.
And what's going on for us up there in West Point?
Well, with Kia, you've got an influx of 3,000 folks.
Right.
Not necessarily everybody wants to take graduate studies or even undergraduate studies, but again, being positioned, forethought, proactive, that there are going to be needs that need to be met, and Kia provides a tuition assistance program that we have packaged programs specific for their industry development that they can come down and either take courses on the West Point campus, come down to campus here if they live here, and maybe commute up to West Point to the Kia plant, or again with the flexibility and portability of the online offerings. We're adding more and more online degrees every semester, and so that's what folks are looking for: convenience, flexibility. But what's important here, as you folks know, as educators, personal touch. Sure. And that's what we do, I think, really well, is the personal touch, to see them from the beginning, once we get them on the hook and enrolled, all the way to graduation. And that's where, our brand, our CSU brand, is what helps attract these students.
Okay. Now, how big a presence do we have at West Point? What are we actually offering up there right now? You said some grad, some undergrad.
Mostly undergrad courses, and they're at the core. But my understanding is that a person who takes courses up at West Point can complete just about everything in the core there. And as that we can demonstrate that we can deliver courses there, then perhaps more of the majors, or as more courses go online or more degrees go online, there's flexibilities for these folks to consider CSU as opposed, like I said, to going to someone else.
Okay, excellent. Now, you mentioned the portability of graduate work for the people at Fort Benning. Now, having reviewed many sets of transcripts, when you look at it, they have college experience all over the world. Some programs are portable where you can be, in Afghanistan and finish your master's degree or do your master's coursework. Is that available through us? Will that be available with our...
Well, that's the goal. It's because, you're here now. You may have the intention of seeing this all the way through, but at some point you may be deployed somewhere else. And so what we want to stress to the Fort Benning personnel and just anybody who takes graduate studies online is that we will follow you wherever you go in the world. We will be there for you.
Beautiful.
And I think that's what builds programs, that's what builds trust, and that's what builds a relationship, so that we can attract more of our students from Fort Benning, who in the past have been, quite honestly, as I said, disappointed. But with our efforts to put more these courses online and offer portability, that they are enrolling and
Excellent.
enrolling in larger numbers.
I think that's a great plan. I just wanted to make sure we got to those points.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, hopefully somebody at Fort Benning is watching this and they'll go and spread the good news.
Well, yeah, hopefully so. You mentioned you're a student in the leadership program.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
I took advantage of CSU's tuition assistance program.
Okay.
I had taken courses at Mercer when I was there and under the same rubric, but it was at the undergraduate level, and I enjoyed it immensely.
Okay.
Because, when you're at your doctoral program, there's really no formal training other than if you get a teaching assistantship, they throw you in front of an intro class. And
Trial by fire.
That's right, and that sort of has worked out, but I never understood the philosophy or necessarily pedagogy or these things, and so I enrolled in these classes. They were enormously helpful to me in the classroom, and I said, why not here? But when I got here, it was more of a sense of, well, they have a leadership program. I'd like to try this because one day I would like to see myself. I wasn't expecting it right away. One day, when I grew up, that I might be in administration, and so this leadership program has been enormously beneficial. In fact, I'm taking a course now that I just finished up that I enjoyed very much, where we read Stephen Covey's book on leadership, and it just opened up new doors and has really helped me make this transition. And I'm very grateful to be able to participate in such a program with such outstanding faculty.
So does that mean that on a typical Friday night, students can find you right beside them in the library studying for finals? Is that
Sure,
if
that's what they want to think, that's fine.
That's great. I think we've come to the point where we can take a break, and I would just like to remind folks that we're on the Education Forum with Season 2, and I'm Jeff Conklin. back on the Education Forum. I'm Jeff Conklin, and today our special guest is Dr. Greg Dolman, who is the Interim Associate Provost here at Columbus State University, and also the Director of the Graduate Programs, or the soon-to-be Graduate School, which is going to have its open house in December. And right before the break, we were talking about graduate programs, what CSU offers, and I wanted to start out by saying, what does a graduate student look like at CSU?
Well, I anecdotally, me.
Yes. Okay.
They look like me.
All right.
In the sense that, we have a lot of professionals who work full-time jobs.
Okay.
Or flex hours, whenever that may be, not the traditional 9 to 5. And so a lot of them are looking for the flexibility to come back and continue their education, but can't do it so in a traditional setting. We were talking off air about when I was in graduate school, we had 50,000 plus students. A lot of folks could devote themselves to just going to graduate school, which is a great luxury.
Yes.
You get a well-paid graduate assistantship or teaching assistantship, and you can basically just go to school for nothing. Well,
that's your job.
That's your job.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But in today's economic climate, with 10% unemployment, you calculate in underemployment, that's more like 17%.
Yes. Yes.
Folks are looking for other avenues other than I can't spend all day in the classroom. I have a family to raise. I have a job to go to. I have other obligations. And so, you want to provide that flexibility. And as we were talking off air, it's like, again, one of the appeals of the Education Leadership Program for me as a student is that I could take it all online.
Sure.
So that at my convenience, I've got a schedule. I know when things are due. I can do it in the comfort of my own home, at my own leisure. And I think, as more flexibility and convenience is offered to our students, more folks will continue to select CSU.
Okay. Now, do you see in the future having regular full-time graduate students, the traditional ones like you had at Arizona, as I had at Western Michigan, as Greg saw at New Mexico? Are we going to eventually have some of those? Are we going to have money available for graduate students that way?
Well, that's always a goal to shoot for.
Okay.
And I'm scheduled to meet with Advancement to talk about some of these ideas, about how Advancement goes about doing things for the graduate school. And you can call during a fundraiser and say, I'm from CSU, I want to raise money for the graduate school. I don't think anybody's going to open up their wallet and say, well, I'm just going to give money to the graduate school. You need to give them well, it would be great. But, the reality is you need to give folks a reason. And so
Certainly.
I think maybe in terms of scholarships or assistantships or, even those donors who might not want to lay out a whole lot of money, maybe someone or two or three would be willing to sponsor someone's education at the graduate level for a couple of years, and instead of the big donations, they could do that, and that could be made available to students as well. I'm also of the idea that maybe we could put something on our web page at the graduate school for folks who would want to maybe give donations for a myriad of things that they do. So just trying to brainstorm about, in these very difficult economic times, to raise resources to make it more affordable for students to go to graduate school. Now, it's a great bargain to begin with, but as we know, it can be an expensive proposition if it's all coming out of your pocket, or if you have to fund it through loans, because eventually the loans have to be paid back. There's no bailout for the consumer.
No, there's not for us.
As we know, GM and others, not so much.
I think it's an interesting idea to think about raising money for individual graduate students. I mean, I've thought about that in the past. And if I were to get a phone call, I would be more willing to donate money to a particular graduate student or group of graduate students in a particular program because it's more meaningful to me.
It's like we have, though, in our program.
Absolutely.
The Shaw Scholarship.
Absolutely.
We have the Shaw Scholarship that will sponsor 2 graduate students a year, full-time. So, they do a graduate assistantship, covers tuition, covers books, plus gives them money when they're in the classroom teaching. Gives them $1,000.
And exactly. And as a donor, then, you're really able to target where you're putting the money into things that you're concerned about in the community. As
opposed to, is this just going to a bureaucrat paying overhead, and it's not getting to the grassroots where a needy or deserving student could use this money, but is just doesn't have the means. And so that kind of forward thinking, that kind of out of the box. And obviously, I'm not the one who thought of this. You guys are way ahead of me, but I think more of a concerted effort to do this is imperative, and to give them reason to donate.
Right.
You know, not just to the graduate school, but like I said, if we could create scholarships or assistantships, maybe more would be willing to donate. In fact, you know, we're sending letters. This is perhaps not directly related, but you know, just going back 5 or 6 graduating classes and sending them a letter, asking them, you know, would they be interested in coming back to CSU as a graduate student if they're not already, and offering them, you know, a specific program that they might want to look at. And you know, the more that you're able to grow the graduate school, the more that you're able to graduate students, the more likely you're going to have folks who are going to want to give back.
Sure,
Right.
sure.
And so it behooves us to not only strategically, but also as a partnership with the community, but also that we grow this and provide resources for folks who just don't have them.
Well, and I think what's going to help you, what you've already done, is having a graduate school. That's going to give you that presence where people are going to say, ah, it's really there.
Yeah.
It's not just individual programs. It's, you know,
That's
a regular
right.
school. So.
There's an actual physical space. Again,
Yes.
Tucker Hall, if you
Yes.
didn't get that in the first couple of seconds.
Good, good.
December 1st, 9 to 11 a.m. And come and just, you know, we have brochures, we have information, we have people who can answer your questions, and you know, it's a different game than it has been in the past. And as you know, my father used to like to say, we're trying to matriculate the ball down the field. However slowly we're going to do that, we're going to, you know.
It's going to do it.
I like it. So if someone's interested in graduate programs here at CSU, who should they contact?
They should contact our office as one outlet.
Okay. Now, do you have a web presence just for the school?
There is a web page at the CSU site.
Okay.
You can go to that.
Are you on Facebook?
I listen to 8-Tracks.
Okay.
We had this conversation.
That's right, we did. I just, you know.
I believe
everybody has Facebook presence now.
not me personally, but yeah. But that's one of our goals is to be using social media more prominently, and we're working closely with Jay Knappy and Thomas Daly on this, and that's not such a long-term goal, but by August. And you know, you can call our offices and we direct you, but we also keep track of you so that you know, you're not feeling as if, you know, you apply or you call and then you're lost.
Yeah.
But then you can also contact the individual program if you're interested in, you know, getting information that way. So there are multiple avenues that you can do this.
You know, and that's an important piece to emphasize, especially for students that maybe have gone to graduate school here and might be interested in coming back for other reasons. You know, we at a special ed, we run every 2 years a certificate program for teachers interested in getting their gifted certification in the state of Georgia to teach gifted and talented kids. And you know, one of the things we've run into in the past, or when I say we get calls from prospective possible interested students who submit materials, but they're not quite sure where it is in process. And it's really nobody's fault, but it's just more work in tracking this information down for a student, and so, you know, the idea of a graduate school gives them that place to call and get that information, or now that there's an organization there, that information going to them without them even having to wonder or call. I think that's tremendous.
Well, I think having a coordinator, and our coordinator, her name is Miss Paula Hecht, and she's a very nice person, hardworking, is committed to seeing this through, but you know, I think the most important thing that we need to have is communication and accountability. And so we're hoping that as we roll this out, that if you have a prospective student, it's communicated to the graduate school puts that prospective student in the queue and enrolls them on an Excel sheet, and then we can begin to track them. And they're reminded every 3, 5, 7, 15 days, this is where your application is, or we haven't heard from you, so that they're constantly being pestered. And it goes back, pester is maybe not such a good word, but we're showing concern, and we are generally showing concern that, you know, we are interested in the personal touch. We do want you to come to Columbus State. We don't want you to feel as if we've dropped the ball, and then you're on to some other school for graduate programs.
And exactly, you know, and that's the thing. Students really, I think, in my experience, just wonder, did you receive my stuff?
And that's what you hear.
Is it in the right place? I'm not sure if I sent it in the right place. Did you get it?
What's happening on it? They don't always get an answer from me because I can't always follow up at that level.
And so just a little letter and coming to them. I mean, that's what a graduate school really provides, I think, CSU.
And so it's either a letter or an email,
Okay.
or in Paula's case, Paula likes to pick up the phone
Excellent.
and dial and talk to you personally so that you have a person that you're talking to, as opposed to, I've been around the block and I haven't been able to talk to somebody. You know what? I'm going to school X.
That's right.
I walk in there, they give me all the paperwork, I fill it out, and I walk out at the end of the day and I've got a schedule.
I know where I'm going. Yeah.
That's right. And so by having, I guess, customer service, which is the retail person in me, we're hoping to continue to attract more students by just extending that courtesy that I think students expect today.
And they do.
They do.
And I'm absolutely positive, as a side note, there are some students who, when you communicate to them through, say, 8-track recordings, they'll appreciate it. That's a niche group.
Or the Victrola.
That's a real niche group. Yeah.
So I think that's a great thing.
Yeah.
Guys.
I'll be doing more of that.
So what do you see in the future for CSU?
I see us continuing to be a main player in the community. I want us to be the first, what am I trying to say here? The first option for students, wherever they are in their program, at the undergraduate or graduate level, to come here as opposed to somewhere else. Because I think as I said, it's a fantastic education that they can receive from a public institution for the everyday man and the everyday woman because of the wonderful faculty that we have and the commitment that we have to our students. And so I think as we begin to take those next steps, I mean, it was once Columbus College.
Yes, it was.
And now we're
Cody Road.
Cody Road.
Yes.
Cody Road High. Now we're a level 5 doctoral institution. I think I'm saying that right. That we continue to offer more of the community's needs, or we meet more of the community's needs through education.
Now, we were recently designated as a regional institution.
Right, that's a level 5.
And what does that mean as opposed to Columbus State University in Columbus, Georgia?
Well, now we're sort of playing with the big boys. Because we have not just only master's level programs, but as you know, in the School of Ed, we have a doctoral program.
Yes, we do.
And one day our goal in political science is to have a DPA.
Excellent.
And so the barriers have been removed. We've overcome that hurdle, and now I think as long as we continue to strategically plan, we can begin to offer more of the programs that meet the needs of the constituents we are servicing, like I said, as opposed to just having a program for the sake of having a program.
Now, do you see additional master's degrees coming out of this in other areas as well?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, we're bundling together Board of Regents proposals. In fact, your proposal
yes, we have
from
one.
the,
Yes,
from
for
the
the
Special
EDS.
Education Department is going to be sent up to the Board of Regents in Atlanta here at the end of the week or the very beginning of next week.
Excellent.
For their deliberations in January. And so we had to sort of have a 3-year forecast, and I think there's at least one program in each of the colleges.
Okay.
And that's a good thing because it's showing growth, initiative, and understanding the needs of the community. And they'll continue to grow. They'll continue to roll in, and we'll continue to process them, and we'll continue to send them up to the Board of Regents.
Oh, excellent, excellent. What has been your biggest challenge since you got into this role of Associate Provost? Was it the graduate program, or is it the other administrative things?
It's probably trying to feel like I'm doing something.
Okay.
And I don't mean to say that facetiously.
No,
I mean,
no,
at the end of the day, when I was chair, I had sort of something of a work product to look at. I accomplished this. Here, it's sort of understanding how things work.
Which you're still learning.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I was still learning as chair, so. But understanding how things work, putting people in contact with one another, pitching ideas that I think make sense, but that somebody else may have had the same idea. It's, as I said, just trying to get everybody together who has a stake in the graduate school and having process and having discussions and making this the best possible graduate school we can.
Great.
By taking all the collective talent that we have, and we've got plenty of collective talent here, and as I said, matriculate the ball down the field.
Right.
A little bit every day, and so maybe one day I have just nothing but meetings, and well,
that
so be it.
Feel like you're
it doesn't feel like I'm doing anything,
but you are.
But the end product is that if I've got the players in place, you can begin to make recommendations, and you can begin to get the faculty involved, and are we on the right track, and if not, how do we get on the right track? For example, tomorrow we're having a directors meeting of the graduate programs, and we're going to talk about, well, what are we? Where do we want to be in 3, 5, 10 years? What's our brand? What's our mission statement? And having those conversations, because as I said, we sort of operate in these silos.
We do.
But now we need to sort of coordinate all the silos so that we're all on the same page. And I'm talking in cliches, and I hate to do that, but you said to be conversational, so I am.
And you sound excited, and you're excited about where it's going.
Well, I am because in the long run, somebody will come up to me and at some point and say, "You made a difference," and that's what it's all about. Is trying to make a difference, trying to make a positive difference, and then somebody will carry on after me, and we build on the work of Tom Hackett and all those folks who have sort of labored all these years to make a graduate school happen.
So are we building the provost's office, or are we rebuilding the provost's office at this point? Because it was a new position.
Well, yeah. No, not really. There's always been the provost and his or her associates.
Right.
It's just that certain responsibilities make more sense that I do as opposed to somebody else, and so Tom Hackett was very cognizant of that, and so these are the things I said I think I could be good at, but with the understanding that there are going to be other things, and I'll take on those challenges as they come. I'm up for it.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I think that's it.
Really?
This has been a whole hour. Why don't you just give us the phone number of the Graduate College and the contact information again, and then we'll take her home.
You can call the Graduate College at area code 706-507-8704, or I like to talk about, you can call me on my cell phone, because, again, I believe in that personal service, that personal touch.
Okay.
Area code 478-213-4516. And if I don't know the answer to something, I will put you in touch with somebody who does know, but be rest assured that once you talk to me, you're in the system, we're accountable to you. We will constantly provide service and reminders of where you need to be and how you finish up your application, how you get enrolled.
Thank you very much. That's it for the Education Forum for today. I'd like to thank my panelists, Dr. Greg Domin.
Yes.
Sorry.
That's all right. It's been a long hour.
Interim Associate Provost and Director of Graduate Studies here at Columbus State University, and of course my co-host, Dr. Greg Blaylock. I'm Jeff Conklin, and I'd like to thank you for watching Season 2 of the Education Forum. I'd like to say to Dr. Domin, keep listening to Love Gun.
Yes.
And
will there be a Season 3?
Gosh, I don't know.
Or Season 2.5?
Asking you. Education Forum is a production of the studio in the College of Education and Health Professions at Columbus State University, Columbus, Georgia. Executive producer, Jeff Conklin. The director is Mike Baltimore. The show is produced by Greg Blaylock. Camera and sound technician, Robert Carroll.